In the soft light of the room, filled with the aroma of mysterious herbs and incense, the fortune teller, with deep attention and concentration, studied the layout of the cards in front of her. With each passing moment, her gaze grew more and more surprised, and the atmosphere in the room was filled with a sense of something incredible. Finally, she looked up at the girl who sat in front of her and said with confidence in her voice that in all her life she had never encountered a person with such a colossal flow of luck. She described the luck as if fate itself played in favor of the girl, making it so that even simple meetings on the street could turn into unexpected gifts and cash prizes, as if wealth itself was her faithful companion. Sitting opposite the fortune teller, the girl listened to her words, and in her mind began to surface memories of numerous cases of extraordinary luck that accompanied her throughout her life. She was indeed often in the right place at the right time, and happiness seemed to be her eternal companion. But here the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed as the fortune teller, faintly somber, moved on to the next aspect of her fate. With a heaviness in her voice, she suggested that despite all the financial good fortune, there would be problems in the girl's personal life. It was as if all her love luck had been converted into gold coins, leaving her heart searching for a true love that would never find an echo in her amazing destiny. This revelation made the girl think deeply about her desires and what really matters in her life, because wealth, as it turned out, is not a guarantee of happiness in all areas of life. Skepticism and disbelief were reflected in the girl's eyes as she, with unwavering confidence in her voice, accused the fortune teller of deceit. She firmly stated that the words of the fortune teller have no basis, because her heart already belongs to another, and she is happy in a relationship built on sincere love, not on material gain. Her engagement was proof that love had already found her, contrary to the gloomy predictions. The fortune teller, however, unperturbed by the accusations, met the girl's words calmly. With an impenetrable expression on her face, she mysteriously predicted that times of change would soon come that would shake the girl's confidence in the permanence of her happy future. The fortune teller emphasized her words with an unexpected gesture, refusing to pay for her services that day. She stipulated that the fee would only be charged when the prediction turned out to be reality, when the changes she spoke of inexorably entered the girl's life. This moment was a test for the girl, bringing confusion to her soul and making her contemplate the uncertainty of the future. She was left alone with thoughts of the upcoming changes that, according to the fortune teller, could drastically change her life. The question of what events lay ahead of her, and whether they would really be as significant as the fortune teller had foretold, began to slowly but inevitably arise in her mind, shrouding the future in a veil of inevitable anticipation. Ilya returned home, her gaze involuntarily drawn to the unfamiliar carriage that had suddenly appeared in front of the manor entrance, taking her by surprise. Her inner gut immediately told her that something unusual was going on, something that could explain this unexpected element in the familiar landscape of her home. As she attempted to pass on, the servants, with uncharacteristic persistence, tried to divert her attention and block her path deeper into the manor, which only added fuel to the fire of her growing suspicions. Not thinking long, Ilya resolutely headed towards her fiancé's room, where a picture unfolded in front of her that abruptly cut short all her doubts, but at the same time confirmed the worst assumptions. Meeting her fiancé and his mistress was an instant blow to Ilya, the embodiment of all her fears that she didn't want to admit until the last moment. The groom, caught off guard, began helplessly trying to justify himself to Ilya, stating that the guest was supposedly a sister and had spilled wine on herself, in which regard he was only trying to help her change her clothes. However, his words sounded so ridiculous and unconvincing that the truth of his infidelity was obvious without any words. This moment was a huge test for Ilya, instantly turning her world upside down. Everything she believed in, all her hopes for the future and dreams of a happy life together collapsed in an instant, leaving behind only a sense of betrayal and disappointment. She had come face to face with a harsh reality she had been so unwilling to face, and now she had to find the strength to accept that truth and decide how to proceed. In this tense moment, when emotions were running high and every word could be a spark that exploded the powder keg of feelings, Rehart suddenly went on the counterattack. His gaze cooled, and he turned to Ilya with unexpected severity, as if she were not a fiancée but a trespasser on his personal space. His words accusing Ilya of lacking manners and barging in on him without knocking sounded absurd in the context of his own betrayal. He tried to shift the blame for what had happened onto Ilya, laying claim to her behavior as if it was something unjustifiable in this situation. Ilya, as if she was under an icy shower, could barely hold back tears at such an incredible accusation. Everything inside her cried out for justice, screaming betrayal by the man she trusted most in the world. The fact that Rehart didn't even try to understand her feelings and instead chose the path of blame only emphasized how far he was from the man she had come to love. At that moment, Ilya realized that the fortune teller who predicted her unhappiness in love was right. Ilya, the daughter of an earl's family, had been shrouded in an aura of extraordinary luck and prosperity since childhood. From the moment she was born, the family fortune began to inexplicably grow. Business flourished as never before, and news of unexpected inheritances from distant relatives became more frequent and surprising. Fate itself seemed to weave a web of luck and prosperity around Ilya, where every participation in competitions inevitably ended in victory, and every time she left the house without a single coin in her pocket, finding gold coins, as if the world sought to reward her for her existence. Ilya's life was truly perfect, filled with events that seemed fabulous and unbelievable. She lived surrounded by love, wealth, and respect until she met Rehart. She saw in him not just a lover, but her destiny, a man with whom she was ready to share all the joys and trials of life. Her faith in him was boundless, and she gave her heart to him without the slightest doubt. However, this idyllic world collapsed when Rehart betrayed her. This act of betrayal destroyed not only their relationship, but also the very foundation of her ideal world in which she was used to living. The discovery of this traitorous truth was a blow to Ilya that she could neither understand nor accept. Everything she had believed in, all her devotion and love, had been mercilessly crushed under the weight of deception. Sitting alone in her room, she could not hold back the tears of despair and pain that burst forth. All the time they had been together, she had tried to conform to his expectations, often forgetting her own desires and preferences. She adjusted to his tastes, interests, and even worldview, believing that this was the way to harmony and happiness in the relationship. Rehart, on the other hand, seemed to take her efforts for granted, not appreciating her self-sacrifice and desire to make their shared life better. The disappointment in Rehart has made Ilya think about her own worth and how she wants to see her life in the future. She realized that their relationship was not equal, and that she deserved so much more than to be a mere shadow of someone else's desires and expectations. Ilya's decision to become free and break her engagement to Rehart was an act of self-respect and restoration of her dignity. She decided that she would no longer flatter anyone and that she would not give Rehart the material support that he had so often and shamelessly begged from her. This moment was a turning point for Ilya. She realized that her happiness and well-being did not depend on someone else, but on her own decisions and actions. The decision to break up with Rehart was not just the end of a toxic relationship, but the beginning of a new chapter in her life where she could live by her own rules, based on her own desires and aspirations. Ilya, haunted by the memories of a recent prediction that had suddenly turned into reality, realized that it was time to pay back her fortune teller. This realization made her decide to go to the bank. As she went through her belongings, she couldn't help but notice how deeply Rehart's preferences had infiltrated her life, even in little things like clothing. It was becoming clearer by the minute that it was time to regain some individuality, starting with updating my closet to suit my own tastes. With these thoughts, she left her room, where she was met by Francis and Malik. The worry and concern in their eyes were undisguised. These two longtime servants and loyal friends had real concern for their mistress, whom they hadn't seen in a month. The encounter was a reminder to Ilya of how much she had missed by immersing herself in Rehart's world. The estrangement from her family, which had once been so close to her, suddenly came upon her with a new force. In that moment, Ilya realized that despite all the vicissitudes of her current life, she must find a way to reconnect and regain the warm relationship that had once blossomed in her heart. Ilya, strolling through the streets, attracted the eyes of passers-by like a magnet. No wonder, for the Blondin family was known far beyond their wealthy neighborhood. their wealth and influence admired even among ordinary citizens. However, Ilya walked surrounded by this attention with a confident and unperturbed posture, because her goal was clearly defined and nothing could embarrass her. Her journey ended at the threshold of a small but cozy house of a fortune teller, whose name was known to many for the amazing accuracy of predictions. Once inside, Ilya got right down to business. With confidence and slight excitement in her voice, she announced to the fortune teller that everything she had told her earlier was true. In gratitude and recognition of the fortune teller's skill, Ilya did not hesitate to pour out the gold in front of her, each coin shining as a symbol of the Blondin family's nobility and generosity. The fortune teller, who had encountered many people and secrets, was genuinely shocked by such generosity at this moment. The huge sum Ilya had offered seemed something incredible even to her, a sum she wouldn't spend in a lifetime, no matter how much she spent. In the shimmering twilight of the mysterious room, where every object seemed imbued with ancient secrets, Ilya voiced her desire to learn more about her future. The fortune teller, whose eyes were hidden behind heavy eyelids like a gateway to another world, told Ilya in a quiet but confident voice that the wheel of fate turns slowly and rarely changes its course in just a few lunar cycles. This time, however, her gaze pierced through the gloom of the future, and she saw in Ilya's fate the silhouette of a devoted partner shrouded in a halo of unfavorable fate. This dark fate, according to the fortune teller's prediction, was to bloom brightly when she met Ilya, like dry earth longing for rain. Ilya, whose heart was filled with excitement and trepidation at the anticipation of the meeting, could not refrain from asking about future trials. She was tormented by the thought of possible betrayals that might mar her journey. But the fortune teller's answer was shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. She only said that Ilya's life was destined to meet a nobleman, and that her path lay to the west towards the setting sun, where new challenges and discoveries awaited her. So, standing on the threshold of the unknown, Ilya suddenly felt herself part of something grand, as if her destiny was closely intertwined with ancient prophecies and predictions that led her along the path of life, testing her faith, willpower, and willingness to face the unknown. Under the roof of the exquisite store, where every item seemed skillfully chosen to create an atmosphere of luxury and sophistication, Ilya took a step towards a new chapter of her life. She was surrounded by a variety of fabrics, colors, and styles that seemed to play before her eyes, offering themselves as the key to a new image, a new self. With an ease unseen to her until that moment, Ilya pointed to several dresses, and then, with a note of determination in her voice, she pronounced that she wished to purchase everything else but those dresses. In that moment, Ilya experienced more than just satisfaction from the purchases she had made. It was like a rebirth, a moment of release from the invisible shackles of the past, when each thing purchased carried a piece of the new Ilya, freed from Rehart's influence. Her companions, Francis and Malik, were not stingy with compliments praising their mistress's exquisite choice, with sincere admiration and support in every word. As she announced her intention to return for her gifts and then head home, it was as if Ilya was reinventing herself with every step she took, with every piece of clothing she chose. However, when the saleswoman unobtrusively inquired about the fate of the clothes Ilya had come in, the image of Rehart flashed through Ilya's mind. This moment was the final chord in the symphony of her release. Without hesitation, she ordered the destruction of her former belongings, as if wanting to banish once and for all from her life the shadows of the past and the memories associated with Rehart. This gesture symbolized the final break with the past and the first step towards an uncharted future full of promise and new possibilities. Crossing the threshold of the next store, Ilya found herself in a space filled with many gift ideas. This place seemed like an oasis where every object had the potential to be a bridge between hearts, to help restore long-lost connections. Ilya, whose heart was filled with determination to overcome the distance that had come between her and her family, chose her gifts carefully. She saw these items not just as things, but as tokens of attention and care that could convey her sincere feelings and apologies. In this search for meaning and significance, when each gift chosen seemed to Ilya to be a step toward reconciliation, a man entered the store. His appearance was as sudden as a flash of lightning on a clear day, attracting the gazes of those around him. The man's appearance was like an open book of harsh stories. His facial features told of strength and determination, and there was mystery in his eyes. Ilya couldn't tear her gaze away, feeling a strange attraction to this stranger. Ilya's attention was further drawn to the man when she witnessed the saleswoman using the moment to try to persuade him to purchase an item whose quality and cost clearly did not match. This moment took Ilya by surprise, for she had not expected to encounter such a display of bad faith here, in a place she had come to with peaceful intentions. Watching the situation unfold, Ilya felt a mixture of excitement and curiosity for this man whose fate had unexpectedly crossed with her own in such an unusual place and circumstance. Ilya, standing in the shadows of her reflection, was struck by the unexpected turn of events. Among all the items on the shelves of this store, the music box seemed the least attractive purchase. This artifact, covered in a layer of the dust of time, didn't look worthy of attention, especially for someone whose appearance didn't scream wealth. Nevertheless, this man, enigmatic and determined, not only paid attention to her, but expressed a desire to purchase her. The situation took a new turn when the saleswoman, catching the buyer's interest, began to offer him more goods, each of which, in Ilya's opinion, was not worth its price. With every minute spent watching this action, Ilya became more and more convinced that what was happening before her eyes was not just a trade, but an attempt to force unnecessary goods on a man who probably had no idea of their true value. Unable to watch this misunderstanding any longer, Ilya decided to intervene. Her actions were driven not only by justice, but also by an overwhelming desire to protect this man from obvious deceit. Boldly stepping into the conversation, she bluntly stated the saleswoman's attempt to mislead by listing items for sale that were overpriced. However, the man met Ilya's gaze, his eyes sparkling with sternness, making her wonder if her decision to intervene was correct. It reminded her of the past, of the times when she had fallen for promises and sweet words, and found herself caught up in other people's games and intrigues, which eventually led to betrayal. Such a recollection aroused in her mixed feelings, on the one hand a desire to retreat and interfere no more, on the other an irresistible urge to act, based on her inner strength and character. However, despite her initial hesitation, Ilya was determined not to back down. Her resolve was strengthened not only by her past experience, but also by her firm conviction that the truth must prevail. At this point, the saleswoman, as if wanting to increase the tension, emphatically stated that the prices matched the quality of the goods, emphasizing her words with the implication that Ilya might simply not be able to afford expensive purchases and should look at cheaper goods. This dismissive suggestion only added fuel to the fire, causing Ilya a new wave of determination to act. She realized that what was before her was not merely a choice of purchase, but a matter of principle and justice. Despite being able to walk away and not interfere, an inner voice urged her to take action to help someone she felt was in a difficult situation. Suddenly, like a bolt of lightning, the shopkeeper appeared. His appearance was as sudden as his subsequent actions. He, a man who usually exuded confidence and authority, ran out from the depths of the store straight to Ilya, and to the surprise of everyone, including the dumbfounded saleswoman, knelt down in front of her. This gesture was full of symbolism and heralded a great change. The shopkeeper, whose face usually expressed no doubt or uncertainty, suddenly announced something that seemed absurd. He no longer owned the store. Now the owner of this cozy corner was Ilya Blondin, and she was the one who now decided the fate of a place so dear to the hearts of many. Ilya, accepting her new role not only as owner, but also as guardian of the buyer's interests, immediately got down to business. She announced that she would set prices that would be half of what the saleswoman had been charging up to that point. This decision was not only filled with a spirit of justice and concern for the customers, but was also a powerful step in revenge against the insolent saleswoman. Ilya ordered new price tags to be drawn up immediately, demonstrating her power. In that moment, when the fates of Ilya and the unknown man intertwined on the doorstep of the store, the air was filled with unpredictability. Ilya, standing next to the man, felt a certain awkwardness, not knowing what words to choose for this unforeseen communication. Everything around them seemed to freeze in anticipation of their next words. The situation took an unexpected turn when the man, breaking the barrier of awkwardness, made an elegant gesture of gratitude, bowing to Ilya. His words of gratitude were addressed to her for the unexpected help he so appreciated. Ilya, for her part, was not indebted to a sense of irony. She confessed that her decision to buy the store had been a spur-of-the-moment impulse, a spontaneous desire to take revenge on the insolent saleswoman who had overcharged her without realizing it would have such consequences. Ilya emphasized that she couldn't stand the idea that a man could be ripped off using unfair trade practices. The man, for his part, displayed an unwavering spirit and stern temper, declaring that no refusals were accepted and that Ilya was obliged to take his gratitude as a given. Seeking a compromise and in an effort to ease the tension, Ilya turned her attention to the music box, which she thought might be the perfect gift and token of appreciation. The offer of this nifty item caused an instant change in the expression on the man's face. The smile that lit up his face was a vivid reflection of the melted ice between them. The moment was a testament not only to their mutual respect, but also to the sudden beginning of something new and unpredictable in their relationship. The minute Ilya contemplated her actions, she couldn't escape the thought of the sudden change in the man's mood. Not long ago, his face had been shrouded in sternness, but now, looking at the music box, he seemed quite different. Ilya, upon reflection, speculated that the man might have been looking for a gift for his fiancée. The thought involuntarily made her feel envious, imagining how valuable and considerate this gift from the heart could be. As Ilya was about to leave the store, immersed in her own thoughts, the man turned to her. He handed her a couple of gold coins, insisting that it was a modest reward for her help. There was sincerity in his voice and a note of guilt for what he felt was taking up her time. But Ilya, feeling the spark of kindness fading in her heart, rejected the offered coins. She felt that her action was not motivated by a desire for reward, but by a desire to do a good deed. The man, trying to find a way to repay her kindness, began to offer something in return, but Ilya resolutely refused. She stated that she didn't need anything, emphasizing that her actions were not for material gain, but for a sincere desire to help. This moment was a testament to her selflessness and emphasized the depth of her inner world, where it is most important to remain true to oneself and one's principles, even when coming face to face with the unexpected challenges of fate. Leaving the scene of her recent adventure, Ilya turned to the man with a slight smile as a ray of sunlight slid across her lips. She declared that she did not need money, for she was Blondie, the one whose name was known far beyond this place. Her words sounded like music, leaving behind an echo of mystery and independence. She stepped confidently into her carriage, enveloped in the silence of the passing day, and settled gently on its comfortable cushions, preparing for the journey back home. The man, as if bewitched, remained standing in the street, his eyes fixed on the departing carriage. A reflection of surprise and admiration flashed in his eyes, and he could not tear his gaze away from this ephemeral spectacle. Ilya's thoughts at this time floated far ahead to the words of the fortune-teller who had predicted favorable variables in the West for her. She pondered her future, her new store, which she had acquired not without a drop of adventure and excitement. Will it prosper? She asked herself, delving into the strands of her hopes and doubts. The ride home was filled with a silence that gave Ilya space to ponder. She thought about how strange and unexpected the turn of fate can be, how in one moment you can become the hero of your own story, finding yourself in the center of events destined by the stars or chance. The man who remained in the street continued to watch the carriage as it disappeared into the fading twilight. His eyes were full of thoughts of an encounter that might change his own destiny. Barely had Ilya freed herself from the embrace of the carriage, stepping onto the familiar path of domestic refuge, when she was greeted by a figure shadowed by the sun at sunset. It was Henley, her brother, whose intelligence and kindness were known throughout the empire as a shining example of unparalleled genius and unimpeachable feeling for his sister. Henley, a shining example of caring and devotion, often took on the role of guardian, filling in for their ever-busy parents. His greeting was full of warmth and tenderness, as if he was trying to brighten Ilya's every moment with his presence, making her life brighter and fuller. But a sudden coldness had crept into their brother-sister relationship. Ilya's affection for Rehart, where she was not only a welcome guest, but the object of everyone's attention and respect, was beginning to have an undesirable effect on their relationship. The brother and sister, who had always been each other's support and comfort, faced an unfamiliar challenge. Paths of misunderstanding and irritation began to trail in their hearts, leading them down the unknown roads of their own emotions and feelings. The moment they met, as the last rays of the setting sun played across Henley's face, he wasted no time in addressing Ilya with a question that had long been in the air, felt by both but rarely spoken aloud. He wondered if Ilya had made any attempt to repair her relationship with Rehart, a character surrounded by an aura of tension in their family circle. Ilya's answer was decisive and unambiguous. She admitted that she could no longer tolerate Rehart, as if with each word she cut off the invisible fetters that had long restrained her feelings and thoughts. Henley, noticing Ilya's many gifts, did not miss the opportunity to suggest that they might have been intended for Rehart, trying to guess at an attempt at reconciliation or renewal of their former relationship. However, Ilya dispelled his speculation by confidently stating that all the gifts were for her alone. With those words, it was as if she had finally closed the door to the past, behind which her unrequited feelings and uncertain relationship with Rehart remained. Ilya openly admitted that she had been deluded for too long and was now ashamed of her blind affection for Rehart, which had left their entire family worried and anxious. Now standing in front of Henley, Ilya felt as if she were on the threshold of a new life where there was no room for old mistakes and misconceptions. She expressed her willingness to apologize, not only with words, but also with actions, showing a willingness for change and a new beginning. At this moment, her heart was determined to truly right her past wrongs and regain trust and understanding in the eyes of her brother and her entire family. The realization that Henley had always seen Rehart's true nature did not come to Ilya immediately. But when she finally acknowledged it, she felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The previous arguments and disagreements between brother and sister over Rehart, which had once seemed unreasonable and cruel to her, now appeared in a completely different light. Henley, with his flair and understanding of people, really saw through Rehart's outward brilliance and charm to his true self, hidden from many. When Ilya shared her decision to break away from Rehart and start her life with a clean slate, Henley's first reaction, the assumption of her sister's illness. Though the phrase was said as if in jest or with slight surprise, it made Ilya feel unsure for a moment. But the realization that her decision had elicited such an unexpected reaction from her brother soon turned into a smile. The smile was not just a reaction to Henley's words, but a symbol of her inner transformation and her willingness to move forward, leaving behind the hard lessons of the past. The confusion caused by her brother's initial reaction was quickly replaced by relief and even joy at the realization that she and Henley could now look in the same direction without being divided into opposing sides over Rehart. In the back of his mind, Henley burned with an overwhelming curiosity, eager to unravel the mystery shrouding the events that had happened to his sister, Ilya, exactly 1 month ago. The thought of what was hidden from his gaze beckoned to him like the fire of a moth. As he questioned, unpleasant memories flashed through Ilya's mind like a whirlwind, piercing her consciousness with the sharp needles of the past. She was at a crossroads between the desire to open up and share the full extent of the pain of Rehart's betrayal with her brother, and the need to keep that hard knowledge to herself a little longer. Ilya, whose heart was burdened with the weight of betrayal, felt it was time to reveal the truth, but not now, not at this moment, when every word seemed like a blade that could wound her further. She searched for the right words to express her pain without hurting her brother's soul. Meanwhile, Henley, unable to contain his growing impatience, pressed his sister to reveal exactly what Rehart had done. There was a note of determination and steadfastness in his voice. He was ready to face any truth, no matter how bitter. "My patience is wearing thin," he stated with unquestioning certainty, making it clear that no attempt to defend Rehart would be accepted. He had shown that he was willing to be a support and defense for Ilya, no matter what dark secrets might be revealed. Ilya, for her part, trying to find a way out of the delicate situation and not wanting to go into details, only briefly replied that there had been an argument between her and Rehart. With these words, she tried to put a temporary barrier between her brother and her pain, leaving untold the full story of her disappointment and the betrayal she had suffered. With a heavy sigh, weighed down by the weight of her decision, Ilya broke the silence, as if cutting through the dense fabric of inevitability with her words. She announced her intention to break off her engagement to Rehart, which was like a thunderclap to Henley. His surprise was so great that he could not hide his shock, for not so long ago, Ilya had seemed completely absorbed in the plans for the future, detailing every moment of the upcoming wedding. However, when faced with the determination of his sister, who seemed to dismiss all doubts by declaring that she didn't care, Henley was left at a loss. Later, in the silence of her solitude, Ilya indulged in reflection on the strength and confidence with which she had expressed her decision in front of her brother. She realized that her words sounded more determined than she felt. She realized that her words sounded far more determined than she felt, for the road ahead of her was strewn with obstacles and difficulties to be overcome to free herself from the shackles of the engagement. The difficulty was compounded by the fact that their families were closely linked by a common business, where the engagement of Ilya and Rehart was seen not just as a union of two loving hearts, but as a powerful political tool to strengthen and develop their family business. This prospect made Ilya realize that the decision to break off the engagement would have much deeper implications than simply ending her relationship with Rehart. She foresaw that she would face a host of challenges, from family pressures to possible business compliments that could jeopardize not only her personal future, but the well-being of both their families. The decision to break off her engagement to Rehart carried not only personal hardship for Ilya, but also potentially jeopardized the delicate balance of relations between her family and the most powerful forces in the empire. Particularly troubling was that a break with the Rehart family could negatively affect the Ilya family's ties to the imperial house, whose favor and support were vital to maintaining their status and influence in society. In addition, Rehart's father, holding a high office and being Henley's superior, added another layer of complication, for any action against Rehart could affect her brother's career and well-being. Ilya was facing a monumental task that required the support of someone with unquestionable authority and influence in the empire. At that moment, fate itself seemed to have given her a helping hand in the form of an invitation to a banquet at the imperial palace. This banquet could be not just a social event, but the very opportunity that Ilya needed to resolve her predicament. After all, attending such an event offered a chance to meet and possibly win the support of the most powerful men in the empire. Ilya, gathering her courage, made a revelation to her brother Henley that stirred her to the core of her being. She confessed that her differences with Rehart had reached such a point that the thought of marrying him seemed unbearable. Ilya explained that she felt extremely unhappy at the thought of getting married in such an emotional state. Her heart and mind needed a break from the relationship, time for reflection and perhaps healing. She sought understanding and support, expressing a desire to talk to Rehart on her own and explain her feelings to him. Henley, always ready to protect his sister's interests, offered intervention on his part, expressing his willingness to discuss the situation with the Marquis of Tursin, who could mediate or even resolve the problem in their favor. But Ilya, showing determination and willingness to take responsibility for the situation in her own hands, rejected his proposal. She insisted on meeting Rehart in person and telling him all her worries and concerns. This moment was important not only for the resolution of their current crisis, but also for Ilya's self-definition as a person who seeks open and honest dialogue, even in the face of difficulties. After Ilya and Henley reached an understanding about her decision to discuss her relationship with Rehart, there was an awkward silence between them. It was that rare moment when words lost their power and silence spoke louder than any utterance. At this moment in time, they both seemed to feel the gravity of the upcoming ordeal that could change the course of their destinies. Suddenly, in an attempt to break this vicious cycle of silence, Ilya held out a gift to Henley. It was a gesture filled with symbolism and warmth, a bridge between hearts seeking to strengthen their bond in the face of impending change. Henley, with some surprise, accepted and opened the gift, but his reaction was completely unexpected. He showed no emotion, which in turn upset Ilya. She, feeling misunderstood and perhaps even rejected, said she had business to attend to and left the room, leaving her brother alone. Left alone, Henley allowed himself a smile as he stared at the music box, which now held more than just a melody. The item became a symbol of the unspoken feelings, hopes, and memories that connected brother and sister. The music box, given with love, embodied the tenderness and care that Ilya felt for Henley, even despite his seeming nonchalance. In the quiet of the night, when all the hustle and bustle of the day had settled, Ilya found moments for personal reflection and reminiscence. The gold cufflink with the softly engraved white magnolia in the palm of her hand was more than a piece of jewelry. It was a key to the doors of her past, leading to a moment that had left an indelible mark on her heart. Thinking back to the day she had nearly drowned, Ilya felt anew all the emotions that had overwhelmed her when a certain man had appeared out of nowhere to be her savior. This act of selfless courage and strength as he pulled her out of the cold, merciless embrace of the water suddenly awakened feelings in her that she had never experienced before. The crush that seized her in that moment was so powerful and sudden that it left an indelible mark on her soul. The heat she felt in her heart at the first sight of her savior was unlike any previous emotion. It was something more than gratitude or relief. It was like an awakening, a moment when her whole life took on new meaning thanks to this sudden and momentous encounter. The gold magnolia cufflink was no longer just a beautiful accessory, but a symbol of the unknown bond that connected her to the man who had saved her life. It reminded Ilya that each of us has the capacity for deep, sincere feelings that can transform even the darkest moments of our existence into a source of light and hope. She still cherished the thin thread of hope that Rehart, her once intimate person in whom she had trusted so unreservedly, would find the strength and courage to come to her, to kneel before her, and with tears in his eyes, to ask forgiveness for the betrayal he had committed. That betrayal had left a deep wound in her heart, a wound that would not heal so easily. But days went by, and no apology came from Rehart, not even a simple letter that might have been a sign of consideration, a sign that her feelings and experiences mattered to him. This silence only intensified her anger and resentment, turning them into an invisible barrier separating their worlds. Yet in this storm of emotion and frustration, Ilya found an unexpected source of strength. Rehart's absence, his complete disappearance from her life, had given her the opportunity to rethink many things, to look at things from a different angle. It was like nature coming alive after a long winter, renewed and filled with the freshness of spring rebirth. Ilya felt her thoughts becoming clearer every day and her soul gaining new confidence and strength. In this state of renewed soul and clarity of mind, Ilya had no doubt that Rehart had received an invitation to the same banquet to which she had been invited. This banquet would be the site of their inevitable meeting, the arena where a new scene of their complicated relationship would play out. Ilya had already envisioned this moment when they would collide glances in the crowd, and in that moment she planned to give Rehart back his cufflink, a small but meaningful symbol of their past relationship, a thing that had once been a sign of their intimacy and now must be a marker of the end and breakup. This gesture was to be Ilya's way of finally freeing herself from past attachments and a step towards a new life in which there would be no place for Rehart. That evening, as the city was wrapped in the magic of the upcoming event, Ilya crossed the threshold of the majestic imperial palace, the place where the banquet was to be held. She entered as if she were the embodiment of beauty and sophistication itself, her appearance leaving no one present indifferent. Her image, like a shining star in the night sky, attracted the eyes, making hearts beat faster. She was the true embodiment of grace and elegance, and everyone in that room was eager to learn more about the mysterious lady whose beauty lit up the room. Among the many banquet guests, Rehart could not help but notice Ilya. His gaze, full of surprise and admiration, met hers. With a smile that had once been so dear to them both, he approached her to express his admiration for her appearance, paying her a compliment that was meant to remind her of the best moments of their shared past. He noted how Ilya always knew how to choose dresses that emphasized her beauty and grace, as if trying to find the key to her heart through memories of bygone times. Ilya's reaction to his words, however, was far from warm and welcoming. With a gesture full of determination and distaste, she pushed his hand away, as if seeking to cut off any attempt by Rehart to approach her again. Ilya's gesture of rejection and judgment made Rehart feel angry and frustrated. They had been so close not so long ago, and now there was an invisible barrier between them that seemed impossible to overcome. In that moment, filled with tension and unspoken emotions, it was clear that the relationship between Ilya and Rehart had changed forever, and the way back to the former closeness and trust was already lost. When Rehart, standing in front of Ilya, announced with unwavering confidence in his voice that the accusations against him were unfair, and he had never betrayed her, the atmosphere between them became even more tense. Ilya, whose heart was overflowing with resentment and disappointment, couldn't believe his words. Disbelief and indignation flickered in her eyes. It seemed incredible to her that Rehart continued to deny his treason, standing so close, looking at her as if his conscience were completely clear. The moment she was about to pull out the cufflink symbolizing their past relationship to finally break the bond, something happened that turned the attention of everyone present. A sense of surprise and shock swept through the room where the guests were gathered as Karhan Evation appeared on the threshold. His arrival was an event that no one could help but talk about. Evation was known for his long absences from such events, and his sudden appearance caused a wave of whispers and whispering among those gathered. Despite all the rumors surrounding his name and speaking of his unfriendliness and aloofness, everyone present couldn't take their eyes off this mysterious guest. Karhan Evation, whose presence brought an element of surprise and intrigue to the evening, instantly became the center of attention, distracting the guests from any other events, even the tense clash between Ilya and Rehart. This moment proved to be a turning point not only for the evening, but also for Ilya, who had momentarily forgotten her intention of confrontation with Rehart, lost in the general daze caused by Evation's appearance. Karhan Evation, a name that caused awe among even the bravest souls in the Empire, now stood before the banquet guests, shrouded in an aura of mysticism and understatement. The second son of the influential Duke of Evation, Karhan, unexpectedly took his older brother's place as direct heir to the Great Duchy. His reputation, surrounded by whispers and gossip, portrayed him as a man ruthless and efficient, whose actions on the battlefield were as deadly as they were silent. It was said that he was capable of sending anyone to the next world without leaving behind a drop of his own blood or a tear of regret. The rumors that reached Ilya were exceptionally negative, painting the image of Karhan in the darkest of tones. Never having met him face to face and never having been able to verify the truth of the stories, Ilya could not escape the feeling of mystery enveloping this man. Her curiosity piqued with every mention of his name, but the crowd gathered in the imperial palace denied her the chance to see Karhan Evation with her own eyes and form her own opinion. Suddenly, amidst the hustle and bustle of the meeting, it dawned on her that she had to finish her conversation with Rehart. However, just as she was about to approach him, Rehart was immediately joined by a group of aristocrats. Among them, one singled out Ilya, casting a look of admiration upon her, and without hiding his thoughts, dubbed her a true beauty. In response, Rehart, as if defending his right, instantly pulled Ilya to him, as if wishing to emphasize that she was his chosen one, his future wife, and this fact should have been clear to all present. Such an act undoubtedly stirred a storm of emotion in Ilya. She felt a surge of indignation, for she found Rehart's behavior too possessive and even intrusive. But before her anger could flare to full force, the aristocrats unexpectedly turned her attention to an entirely different matter, asking about the villa they planned to rent from Ilya. This turn of conversation cooled her fervor a bit, for the topic of real estate was far removed from Rehart's personal emotions. Rehart, with a smile playing on his lips, quickly used the moment to ease the tension. He confidently assured the aristocrats that all their wishes would be taken into account and that he would personally see to it that everything was organized at the highest level. At that moment, as the talk went on about the future of the leased property, Ilya realized something important. She caught an invisible thread in the air, connecting her to Rehart in the eyes of the aristocrats present. To them, she was still Rehart's future wife, despite his recent betrayal. That realization made her heart race, for Rehart's betrayal had left a deep wound in her heart, and now every reminder of the wedding that would not be only added fuel to the fire of her pain. Unable to tolerate this game of appearances any longer, Ilya pushed Rehart away with determination, as if trying to physically cut herself off from the painful connection to the past. Her words were clear and unwavering. She declared that she saw no reason to help him after all that had happened. Rehart, for his part, tried to turn the situation in his favor by mentioning that he had already made a promise to his friends about the villa, as if trying to use their shared past to sway her to cooperate. Ilya, however, defying his entreaties, replied with a smile full of self-confidence and independence. She made it clear that Rehart's problems were no longer her problems. Her words sounded like a verdict, clarifying the new boundaries of their relationship, where Rehart must deal with the consequences of his decisions on his own. This exchange of remarks not only emphasized the gap between them, but also showed Ilya in a new light, as a woman who found the strength to assert her dignity and autonomy. As she left the scene of her last confrontation with Rehart, Ilya felt an overwhelming desire to release the mental tension that had gripped her. She grabbed a bottle of champagne and, not shying away from the accepted norms of etiquette, began to drink straight from the throat. This act of small rebellion against the restrictions she felt in her life was like a breath of fresh air for her tired soul. Walking to the balcony, Ilya stood there, letting the cool evening air cool her face and thoughts. In this secluded space, she came face to face with the reality of her situation. The impossibility of discussing with Rehart the final breaking of their engagement symbolized by the unreturned cufflink. Reflecting on the cufflink she still kept, Ilya realized that the little thing had become an inordinate burden. She was tired of the endless cycle of wondering what to do with her and had come to the conclusion that she didn't have to give her back. With that thought, she raised her hand, ready for the decisive gesture of throwing the cufflink into the night as a symbol of release from past ties. But just as she swung around to carry out her plan, a man suddenly entered the balcony. Their gazes met, and they were both struck by the suddenness of the encounter. Neither of them had expected company in such a secluded place, and it added a special poignancy to the moment. The air between them was charged with the tension of a sudden rapprochement that intertwined the surprise, awkwardness, and mystery of a night that promised new twists of fate. Ilya's surprise knew no bounds when she realized who stood before her. This unexpected guest seemed to bring with him a piece of the fate that had made their paths cross again. Embarrassed by his inappropriate appearance, he apologized to Ilya, expressing his willingness to leave the balcony immediately so as not to disturb her privacy. But there was a note of confusion in his voice that did not go unnoticed. Ilya, contrary to her own amazement at this turn of events, felt a sudden rush of empathy for this man. She stopped him when he was ready to retreat into the shadows of the evening, noticing more than a desire to apologize behind his words and actions. A light of understanding and sympathy flashed in her eyes as she offered to let him stay if he needed to, even for a short time. Her words were an invitation to dialogue, a reflection of her willingness to share a moment of solitude on this balcony that had unexpectedly become the meeting place of two destinies. This offer to stay was more than a simple gesture of politeness. It was a bridge between two people who had suddenly found themselves together in an ocean of evening silence, where each of them might be seeking answers to their questions or refuge from their storms. In this act, Ilya opened the door to an unexpected understanding, offering a space for companionship that could be a brief refuge from the unrest that engulfed them both. In the expanse of the balcony, where the air was filled with an invisible fabric of tension, the man chose a seat on the edge, trying to respect Ilya's personal space as much as possible. His unwavering face, as if carved from stone, betrayed not the slightest emotion, making Ilya wonder about his inner world. It seemed to her that his appearance concealed depths unseen to the naked eye, and the thought entered her mind of how it would be received if she frankly expressed that his appearance inspired fear in her. The man crossing the bridge to understanding apologized for his behavior during their last meeting. His words sounded sincere. He admitted that he hadn't realized that his actions might have caused Ilya anxiety or upset. That moment of disclosure, when he opened his soul to her, showed him a different side, making him rethink his initial impression. Ilya, for her part, weighed his words, trying to penetrate beyond the outer shell of his words, looking for confirmation of his sincerity in his eyes. Her heart told her that there was deep decency and honesty behind this simple apology. She concluded that despite her initial doubts, this man had kindness and integrity. At this moment in time, on this balcony, a spirit of mutual understanding hovered between them, and Ilya felt her initial fears and prejudices gradually dissipate, giving way to a new, unexpected sense of trust in this uneasy but sincere man. The moment the man expressed the idea that any act of kindness should be rewarded, there was silence in the air. Those words echoed in Ilya's heart, making her think of how many trials he had endured. The hardships he had probably endured had taught him to appreciate any gesture of attention and willingness to help, but Ilya, standing opposite, thought otherwise. She gently objected, emphasizing that her act was merely an act of human kindness that did not require reciprocity, especially in material terms. There was confidence and calm in her voice, for her wealth allowed her not to think of reward, but only of being of service to those in need. Ilya, driven by keen interest and genuine concern, decided to learn more about the reasons that had brought the man to this balcony. Her question seemed easy, but the answer that followed was shrouded in chagrin. A man shared that he was being harassed by the pesky attention of a lady who wants to crown her marriage dreams with him. His words were full of frustration and heaviness, for this harassment was putting him in an extremely embarrassing position. There was a sense of the trap he was looking for a way out of in that confession, standing on the balcony seeking solitude and perhaps solutions. This exchange of opinions and experiences between Ilya and the man opened a bridge of understanding between them. Ilya, listening to him, felt a mixture of sympathy and respect for his feelings and situation. As the man shared the details of his heartbreaking situation, the air around him seemed to linger with anticipation. He talked about the girl whose actions had crossed all boundaries of reason. If he was out of touch for just 24 hours, she would not find a place to be and would not hesitate to break into his dwelling. Her stalking reached the point where she even resorted to disguises to keep tabs on him and flared up in anger at the sight of him socializing with others. Moreover, this girl dared to interfere in his financial affairs as if she was his legal spouse, completely ignoring his request to leave him alone. In the face of such distress, Ilya, driven by a desire to help, offered to seek support from his family. However, her suggestion met with an unexpected reaction. The man looked at her as if his heart was filled with bitterness at the thought of his own family. This look betrayed his inner state and made it clear that relations in his family were far from ideal. The tension between him and his loved ones had reached such a degree that even in such an extreme situation, he could not count on their understanding or support. This moment of discovery exposed to Ilya the complexity of his circumstances, not only in the outside world, but also in his personal relationships. With every word he shared, it became clearer that he was trapped not only by one woman's obsessive attention, but also by the lack of support from those he could turn to in trouble. Ilya, listening to his words, felt the depth of his loneliness and hopelessness, facing a reality in which the only thing she could offer was her attention and understanding, becoming a light in the tunnel of his misery. Ilya decided to talk about her worries and problems with her fiancé, and time seemed to stand still around them. She shared how her heart was broken by the actions of Rihart, the man she trusted most in the world. Her words were full of bitterness and disappointment, and a girl suddenly burst into the atmosphere, adding drama to an already tense scene. Her eyes were full of resentment and anger, her actions full of determination. Without warning, she ran onto the balcony where Ilya was and began loudly expressing everything she thought about the man she said had disappeared without a trace, leaving her alone amidst unresolved problems and misunderstandings. In her angry monologue, she addressed the man by his last name, Evation, which was a real blow to Ilya. She was amazed and dumbfounded at the same time. It was hard to imagine that this man, who seemed to her to be the epitome of kindness and caring, was actually Karhan Evathion, a war demon whose name caused awe and fear among many. This discovery overthrew all her ideas about him, forcing her to rethink not only their relationship, but also herself. Ilya found herself faced with an unexpected truth that drastically changed the perception of the man with whom she shared her innermost thoughts and feelings. A sudden turn of events occurred when the girl, with fire in her eyes, turned to Ilya. Her gaze was as piercing as a sharp blade as she demandingly inquired of Karhan as to who stood before them. Karhan, as if deep in thought, found no words to reply, while the girl was clearly consumed by burning jealousy. The shade of blonde in Ilya's hair was a clear sign to her. She was a member of the famous Blondie family, which only added fuel to the fire of her suspicions. Ilya, trying to find a way out of the situation, decided to pretend like she knew the girl. However, despite her best efforts, Ilya could not recall the slightest detail that could tell her who it could be. The only thing she could realize from this encounter was that the very girl who had been stalking Karhan for a long time was standing in front of her. This realization came to Ilya like thunder, and she instantly realized that her stay on the balcony was becoming extremely risky. It was time to look for a way to escape and to do it as soon as possible because the atmosphere was heating up with every second, promising to unfold unpredictable consequences. As soon as Ilya outlined a plan of action for a quick retreat, the girl, as if reading her mind, abruptly closed the door, blocking the path of possible escape. With eyes burning with resentment and jealousy, she began to loudly rebuke Ilya, accusing her of frivolously trying to flirt with Karhan. In this stream of words, fired like arrows, the girl introduced herself. She was Stella Delata, Karhan's fiancée, whose name sounded like a weighty argument in this tangled game of feeling and accusation. Ilya, absorbed in trying to comprehend what was happening and find a way out of the situation, suddenly remembered a recent incident that seemed insignificant, but now took on a new meaning. It was about a dispute over the design of carriages, which suddenly turned into a serious conflict between two noble families. Ilya realized that the Dalat clan and her own Blondan clan had long been in a state of strained relations, waging subtle but very sharp battles between them for influence and respect. This revelation caused Ilya to rethink her situation and possible solutions to a conflict that only seemed to be gaining momentum. A few years ago, the Blondan family, known for their irresistible flair for luxury and sophistication, introduced to the world their latest creation, luxury carriages that can make even the most sophisticated connoisseurs of beauty swoon with admiration. Having invested enormous efforts and creative energy, they were preparing for the day when the whole world would be able to see the fruit of their many years of labor. However, on the eve of the gala show, the unexpected happened. The original design of the carriages was stolen without a trace. This came as a real blow to the family, having to urgently develop an alternative design to save face in front of an expectant public. At this critical moment, Ilya Blondan came on the scene, and her light hand and uncompromising taste formed the basis for the choice of a new crew design. Ilya, unafraid of risk, set the direction towards an audacious and innovative design that could not only replace the lost model, but surpass it in all parameters. Her decision was the epitome of courage and confidence, a shining example of how one can emerge from the toughest situations with dignity, even when all seems lost. At the same time, as fate would have it, the Dalat family, longtime rivals of the Blondans, unveiled their crew. The stunning resemblance of their crew to the Blondan family's stolen design caused many to raise their eyebrows in bewilderment. The Dalat crew was strikingly identical to the missing Blondan creation down to the smallest detail, as if it had been molded from its template. Despite the clear grounds for the accusations, there was no evidence of a crime. The Dalat family, with cunning and confidence, promoted their crew as the result of years of research and development, skillfully sidestepping any suspicions and accusations, remaining beyond the reach of justice. In the heart of the heated conflict, amidst mutual accusations and a tense atmosphere, Stella Delata and Ilya Blondan came face to face. This moment was filled not only with personal animosity, but also with deep political undertones, foreshadowing the possible eruption of a full-scale battle for power and influence. Ilya, whose presence on the balcony with Karhan had been a stumbling block, met Stella's challenge with an ironic smile. There was more than a response to the challenges in her eyes. It was a reflection of inner confidence and calm. Stella, seized with jealousy and feeling threatened by her position beside Karhan, did not restrain her emotions. Her words, full of accusations and demands, split the air, emphasizing the unacceptability of Ilya and Karhan sharing the same balcony, a place she considered exclusively hers. Stella claimed that Karhan belonged only to her, which made his every approach to Ilya a violation of the invisible but rigid rules of their relationship. In response to the storm of emotions and accusations, Ilya did not lose her dignity. With a smile that was full of sarcasm and self-assurance, she pointed to the root of the problem, which lay in Stella's insecurity about herself and her relationship with Karhan. Ilya emphasized that the baseless accusations were merely a reflection of Stella's inner fears, her inability to see and acknowledge her own insecurities and doubts about her relationship with Karhan. Concluding her reply with an unchanging smile, Ilya gently but firmly suggested to Stella that such accusations required not just words but hard evidence. This moment was not only the pinnacle of their personal confrontation, but also a vivid testament to how, in the game of political intrigue and personal passions, true strength lies not in loud words, but in the ability to remain calm and rational, even when emotions run high. Suddenly, like the lightning that cut the sky over a quiet lake, a memory flashed through Ilya's soul, dark and painful, of the betrayal she had once endured. That memory made her heart clench with bitterness, and sighing heavily, as if trying to drive away the shadow of the past, Ilya turned to Stella with words piercing and precise. She recalled that Stella is early in claiming the title of Karhan's bride, as their union has not yet been crowned with the vows and rituals that make a relationship official and undeniable. With every word that flew from Ilya's lips, the air grew tenser, and Stella's eyes read a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Ilya, keeping her gaze on the somewhat lost Stella, suggested that Stella's eagerness to call herself Karhan's bride might be nothing more than a reflection of her own doubts and distrust of him. This remark hit the target, causing a wave of nervousness in Stella, who immediately turned her eyes to Karhan, trying to find support in his eyes and assurance that her suspicions and fears were groundless. However, when Stella looked at Karhan, seeking confirmation of her words and feelings, she found that his face reflected not support and confidence, but deep irritation and anger. Karhan, who had unwittingly witnessed and participated in this tense scene, clearly did not expect events to take such a turn. His reaction only added fuel to the fire of an already tangled and strained relationship, emphasizing the depth of misunderstandings and unresolved issues hovering between them. Stunned by Karhan's outburst of anger, Stella felt like she was in the center of a storm, with each wave crashing in from a new, unexpected direction. Her surprise at the deep malice she saw in his eyes was so great that for a moment she was overcome with bewilderment. However, Ilya, watching what was happening, did not share Stella's opinion that Karhan was really that angry. Her gaze was penetrating and calm, as if she could see through outward appearances to the deep undercurrents that governed emotions. Stella, unable to bear the pressure of this tense moment, made a sudden movement, pushing Karhan away. Her words, "I'll leave first," cut through the air, and she ran, leaving her voice echoing behind her with the assertion that her leaving had nothing to do with her lack of trust in him. The moment was so unexpected and emotionally intense that Karhan stood still for a moment, bewildered and trying to make sense of the whirlwind of feelings that had just occurred before his eyes. Ilya, for her part, couldn't stay away as she watched Stella try to provoke her, bringing to life the very memories and emotions that had hurt her so deeply in the past. She made it clear that her reaction was not due to a desire for conflict, but to protect her dignity and inner peace. At this moment, Karhan, watching Ilya, couldn't help but notice her confidence and fortitude that showed so vividly in this situation. His words, expressing envy at her confidence, sounded sincere and frank. This confession broke new ground in their relationship, showing that even in the most stressful moments, you can find something to admire and rethink your own outlook on life. Ilya experienced true amazement as a picture unfolded before her that she could not have imagined even in her wildest dreams. Karhan Evatayon himself, whose name was synonymous with majesty and power, heir to the proud title of highest among the nobles, the personification of confidence and determination, suddenly revealed to her the other side of his self. This side was so far from the image of the unyielding ruler who should stand at the head of a duchy. Something different flashed in his eyes, always full of determination and strength, which caused Ilya a wave of genuine surprise. She caught the sincerity in his words, the vulnerability behind the outward gloss of his position. Karhan, a being who seemed to exude nothing but confidence, confessed that he felt out of place standing on the threshold of the great deeds and duties ordained by his blood. His words about not having enough confidence and not seeing himself as the true heir to the duchy because his own people feared him made Ilya look at Karhan from a completely different angle. For a moment, a feeling of sympathy flashed through her heart for Karhan, this powerful heir who, despite all his splendor and power, felt hollow and insecure. This admission was so unexpected that Ilya couldn't help but smile. A smile, however, not of mockery or joy at another's weakness, but rather a smile of understanding and solidarity. In that moment, an invisible bond developed between them, based on mutual understanding and perhaps the beginning of a new way of looking at the world in which even the greatest can experience self-doubt. Despite the menacing image Karhan Evation carried among the people, Ilya saw him as a very different man. She felt not fear in his presence, but a certain unexpected warmth and kindness that contrasted with his outward image of an unapproachable air. It was only their second meeting, but already Karhan had already given Ilya the impression of a man in whom manners and natural kindness came first, unlike his arrogant blood brethren. He never once tried to influence her with his status, nor did he mention his high birth, which further reinforced her opinion of his exceptionalism. In Ilya's eyes, Karhan was not a fearsome ruler, shrouded in an aura of power and fear, but rather a lovable bear who, despite his outward strength and power, possessed a soul full of kindness and understanding. At times like this, Ilya even questioned her own perception of herself, feeling that she was not such a good person in comparison. And then suddenly, Karhan asked her a question that might have shaken their newly begun understanding. He asked her if she was afraid of him, as many people felt. Ilya's answer was simple and sincere. She admitted that she found no reason to be afraid, because there was nothing in his behavior or actions that could cause such a reaction. Her words, full of bewilderment and honesty, made Karhan feel embarrassed. His gaze reflected surprise and perhaps a tiny spark of joy that someone could see him not only as the heir to the duchy, but as a mere human being. This moment was a turning point of sorts for both of them, adding depth and understanding to their relationship. Ilya, with a keen sense and ability to see behind superficial emotions, revealed to Karhan his own experiences during their recent meeting with Stella. She noticed that he was not seized with anger, as it might have appeared at first glance, but with anxiety and excitement. Her insight further heightened Karhan's excitement, who, with gratitude and surprise, admitted that Ilya was the first person who could see behind his mask not just fear, but real feelings. Karhan shared with Ilya that his tendency to get flustered often prevents him from having long conversations with others. He suggested that his face might be expressing too much fear, repelling those around him and causing them to avoid deep communication with him. Ilya was amazed at this conceit of Karhan's, for in her eyes, he appeared to be the epitome of beauty and grace, far removed from the fears and insecurities he saw in himself. This exchange of opinions and feelings became a bridge for them, connecting their views and allowing them to understand each other better. Karhan, accustomed to being perceived through the prism of his title and position, found in Ilya a man capable of seeing his true nature unclouded by external circumstances. Ilya, for her part, found in Karhan not only a noble and powerful heir, but also a sensitive soul seeking understanding and sincerity in relationships.